Aaron Ruracho loves to scare people. That includes friends and family.
On Halloween, I was working as a pizza delivery guy. We were able to wear costumes, and so I dressed up as Leatherface. I had like a little face mask, the apron, and everything. And so at the end of the day, I went over to her apartment in full costume with the chainsaw and everything, and she opened the door, saw me, got scared, and she slammed it shut and refused to let me in until I took it off. I just still enjoy kind of finding ways to sneak up on my wife and have just be standing there, and when she turns around, give her a jump. I've always been a fan of horror and that kind of stuff, and I always thought it would just be really cool and fun to work at a place like this.
The place that Aaron is talking about working? A haunted house attraction where people pay to be scared. Every October, millions of Americans flock to haunted house attractions, or haunts, as they are also called, to be entertained. From theme parks to mom-and-pop haunts, over 1,200 haunted attractions open their doors to guests every year, according to the organization America Haunts. However, not all haunts are created equal. From paintball hayrides to floating zombie barges and everything in between, a lot of work and time is spent on crafting these experiences. To give you some stats, the industry generates $500 million in ticket sales a year. An average haunt has about 8,000 guests lining up to pay, and some locations even employ dozens of scare actors working on site. When it comes to this business, the risks, just like the devil, are in the details. Welcome to the Leader's Edge podcast. I'm Zach Ewell, market analyst and podcast producer at Leader's Edge. In this episode, we will dive into the stories, risks, and exposures that actually haunt America's scare attractions. Back in 2019, I wrote a story about the insurance behind haunted houses. Filled with several interviews, the article dove into how dangerous haunted house attractions can get if not properly insured. From scare actors being attacked by belligerent guests, to patrons injured while navigating low-lit hallways, to even a volunteer working at a haunt passing away due to poor safety standards. What I learned while writing and reporting on this piece only scratched the surface of haunted house attraction risks and the industry's coverage gap. Back in 2018, Aaron Ruracho was working early mornings up until the afternoon at Phoenix, Arizona's International Airport as a supervisor. To fill his afternoons in the fall, Ruracho decided to try out as a scare actor at a local Arizona haunt. After his audition, he got the job. He would go on to work at an Area 51-inspired haunt for the remainder of fall. By day, he assisted airport travelers to get to their flights. But by night, he guided thrill-seeking guests to carnage full of UFOs, vicious aliens, and screaming infected patients.
So essentially, the haunt that I was working was sort of an Area 51 kind of alien invasion kind of theme. The character that I played was essentially just a scientist that had been infected with some sort of alien disease or something and had it taken over his brain and had affected him, so he's violent and dangerous and stuff. They gave me like boils and stuff all over my face and like green makeup, and basically I just stood around and screamed. I was wearing like a lab coat and I would just kind of stand around and scream at people and chase people around and stuff. It starts out, we had a military, like an army kind of guy. He kind of just tells you, okay, like, we're going to have you go through this bunker, go through, get as fast as you can, and get out safely. So he opens up the door, and then there's people jumping out of you here and there, mostly just patients, like wearing, hospital gowns, or scientists. And so you go a little bit further, there's like a bridge that goes down, and then you see an actual like spaceship on the floor. And then we have a couple aliens and people in like full face masks, and they jump out at you as well. And there's also an animatronic. There's like a big hole in the wall and a little animatronic that like shoots through the wall and kind of reaches out at you, with more people jumping out of you here and there, and then pops you out. You go around the corner, and then that's where you exit.
The main thing when you think of like haunted houses or mazes or whatever the case is, it's going to be dim lit, probably even some places pitch black. It's always what's around the next corner. And so there's a lot of movement inside these spaces that people are not aware of necessarily their surroundings. And so they round the corner quickly because they're running away from something and there's an elevation change or like a step or just a ramp or whatever the case is, or maybe there's an obstacle sitting there. And so all of those things are big risks that are part of it.
That's Kyle Teeples, a commercial insurance agent at OVD Insurance. Back in 2015, Teeples started the amusement division of OVD Insurance, which would go on to offer policies for haunted house attractions. With over 10 years of experience in this space, and as somebody I interviewed back in 2019 for my story about insuring haunted houses, I reached out to Teeples again to understand the policies and risks that impacted haunts.
It is a variety of policies that can be opened up. The most basic one would be general liability and workers' compensation when you can get it. But then you can go as far in as depth of employee practice liability, sexual abuse and molestation, assault and battery, all of the nuances that can come up from this as well. And along with the property in the marine and all of that of the physical structures and everything else there as well. I wish I could say it's as easy as a manufacturing facility where you just have product liability for the most part. But in particular, there are lots of stepping over mazes, going through spaces where so many people can trip and fall and get injured. And so, I mean, that is the first and foremost concern of how do you make this so that anybody that's participating is not going to get injured. But then also, what about my employees? How do we make it so that they're not going to get injured? Workers' compensation covers your employees if they get injured. And it can go as far as also when you have like 1099 employees, if they are not having their own individual policy for themselves, technically they're being contracted underneath you, so they would fall under workers' compensation. And that would cover all medical along with lost wages for the workers' comp side of things. The other thing that you really need to protect yourself is when a customer of theirs goes through the set and maybe they become belligerent somehow because they get scared and maybe they swing and throw a punch or something like that.
In terms of people, customers, just being physical, that absolutely that does happen quite a bit. I never got anything bad. The worst that happened to me was, I have long hair. People would generally just touch it quite a bit. So that happened to a lot of people. I think they just have some sort of idea that they can do whatever they want to you. And I had a lot of people threaten to hit me. We did have one guy, a friend of mine, who was in a full alien mask, got punched in the face. And then he wasn't wearing his glasses, but they fell out. And then somebody else stepped on him on accident. So he broke his glasses. It happens here and there. People get physical. And there was another girl who was next to me. She was right before me. And there's a hallway that she's in the beginning of, and then I'm around the corner. So I can kind of jump out at people from that corner. I don't remember what exactly happened to her. I think she had some sort of a pre-existing condition. I don't know, maybe it was epilepsy or something. I think she had a seizure, like the actress did. There were a bunch of exit doors, emergency exit doors you can go in and out of. So they just had they had the two kind of leaders, scooped her up, took her out, and then just kind of took her out the back way. And then they replaced her with just one of the sweepers just stayed in that point the rest of the night. And unfortunately, she didn't return. I guess she had her dad didn't want her to worry about that having to happen again.
Did anyone or fellow staff members receive workers' compensation or insurance in case they got hurt?
I believe so. I don't remember exactly.
Okay.
There's the only injury, actual physical injury that I remember somebody having was, like I said, a friend of mine got punched in the alien mask. But I don't recall. I know he continued to work there the rest of the season. We have a sort of system in case anything happens, like somebody touches you or punches you or whatever. We just, if that happens, you go to the person either ahead of you or behind you. You let them know, and then they go and do the same, and it kind of goes down the chain until it gets to one of the leaders, and then they make sure that individual is kicked out when they leave the haunt.
Scare actors retaining injuries is very common across America. Back in 2019, a scare actor who wished to remain anonymous shared their experience with me, saying, quote, "There's people who are just downright belligerent, punching, hitting, choking, spitting on, and groping actors. One year, somebody came in with a gutter pipe-like object and they cut an actor's hand open." End quote. Additionally, go online and anyone can find an abundance of horror stories of scare actors sharing the toll working in haunted houses takes on their body and mind. One scare actor on the Reddit thread Haunted Attractions shared their experience in more detail. Quote, "I feel like no matter what room they put me in, I can't help but to beat myself up, and it's irritating old injuries and causing new ones. Not to mention the general soreness from climbing around on things or walking on stilts. I just finished opening weekend up, and my limbs are sore. I've got a big old welt on my leg from hitting it on the desk I was jumping onto. I hit my elbow that already has a bone bruise, strained a leg muscle walking on stilts, and the chronic pain in my wrists is flared up from banging a block on the before-mentioned desk. I love scare acting. It's by far been my most favorite job I've ever had, and I really don't want to give it up. I know I should not jeopardize my safety for a scare, but I get so caught up in acting. I fail to watch my surroundings and move with deliberate intent." End quote.
You got to think a lot of people just say, "Oh, I can set up a haunted maze, or I can set up a haunted thing in our pole barn or in this little area because we have a cool farm or something along those lines." And yeah, we can do that. And they're not necessarily thinking about the insurance side of things. And so a lot of people don't have the insurance or the foresight to be thinking towards that. And then when they actually go out to, "Hey, go get me a quote," well, there's only a handful of carriers that are actually willing to represent them because of the exposure that they actually have. And so, if you go to just any old insurance company, most likely they don't have an arm of their business for amusement purposes. And so they don't know those markets. And so when they go and call up their standard markets, they're going to say, "Nope, we don't do that." And then when they go to a lot of the brokers, they're getting these massive numbers for insurance. And they're like, "Well, that's just too expensive. I'm not even going to afford that. And so I'm just going to quote self-insure in a way." So finding an insurance agency that specializes in this area of expertise is really important, because we have a handful of carriers that we can go to that, and depending on the territory of the country that they actually live in, will make a change of which markets are available or what the cost would be, but it's significantly less than going to a lot of the large brokers. I've heard a lot of situations of people that they are, "Okay, we're going to have this haunted attraction, and it might not be conducive for like little kids. So what do we do for the little kids? Well, let's just have some bounce houses around here so they can jump on that." Well, a lot of general liability policies that would even do just a haunt, they exclude the bounce houses. So then if a little kid gets injured over there, which you do hear about that, well, then they have an exclusion for that. And they're like, "Well, I thought I had coverage." And inflatables is a very common thing to be excluded.
Although there are plenty of dangers and risks that plague haunted house attractions, the profits that arise from ticket sales are a major motivator for people to set up haunts. According to America Haunts, the median ticket price per event costs $15 per person, with some haunts costing as much as $45 to $75 per person. Taking into account low startup costs, employing part-time scare actors, and securing a destination for the attraction, haunted houses are easy to make. In fact, turning off the lights doesn't cost you anything. It saves money. Just make sure you have coverage for a trip and fall that may result in a claim.
Yeah, I think with just population growing in general and people trying to be more creative on how to earn money and things like that, there's a lot of, I'll call them quote unquote mom and pops that are saying, "Hey, let's put this on and we don't at our farm," and things like that. So I would say this space has certainly grown. The entire amusement space in general has grown exponentially. It's a really great return on investment in these spaces, because it doesn't take too much. Once you turn off the light, people get scared pretty easily in a lot of ways. So there's not a huge investment on the front end to start getting the rewards on the investment income. So I would definitely say there's been some growth on this.
With the haunted house industry continuing to grow, more and more people will likely continue to show up to be entertained. However, next time you go to a haunted house, it's worthy to consider how safe the attraction really is. Are the actors covered? Did you need to sign a waiver before you entered? And how legitimate does the haunt actually look?
It's fun to make people scared and all of that, but also be conscious of the exposure that you're creating for yourself. When you're doing your waivers and people signing, make sure you're also asking and having them acknowledge if they have any pre-existing conditions before they go through something, because who knows, like, you don't want to get in a situation that someone has a history of heart arrhythms or seizures because of epilepsy or anything like that. Like, you should be aware of that, and they should be going through situations, or if they recently had broken or messed up their knee or something, like, they shouldn't be going through these.
And to end it, although his scare actor days are behind him, one thing is for sure. Aaron Ruracho knows what theme he would pick if he ever had the chance to design his own haunt.
Well, one of the things that initially got me into horror when I was a kid was watching Texas Chainsaw Massacre way too early. I love it. It's kept with me my entire life. I have a Leatherface tattoo, and I've always loved that kind of aesthetic of the, rural countryside with this crazed maniac chasing you around with a chainsaw.
Thanks for listening to the Leader's Edge podcast. For more episodes of our podcast or to subscribe, go to leadersedge.com or wherever you get your podcasts.